Hey y'all, it's Gil Aaron, and today I wanted to talk a little bit more on the topic of electoral politics, and in particular Bernie Sanders. And I wanted to address the fears that Bernie is a sort of a messiah figure to people, and they're going to place all their hopes in him, and A, that this is unfounded, and B, that they are then going to be sorely disappointed, and that's going to cause them to get disillusioned with politics or whatever. So that's basically the topic that I wanted to talk about. So yeah, let's start with just discussing the context of discussing Bernie Sanders. So the thing is, like, you've got a very large amount of people who are very strongly against Bernie Sanders. So there's the mainstream media who take corporate donors owned by like the oligarchy or big corporations and stuff, and who also want to have access to important politicians who are right-wing, so they want to keep them happy too. And they pretty much unanimously hate Bernie Sanders with a passion. Now every now and then you do see the odd positive article about Bernie, which is actually quite refreshing. And obviously there's a few people who work there who started to feel the burn, and it does get increasingly more and more difficult to justify not covering him as polls continue to rise. And so you can also imagine maybe the people in the news organization are like, well, like, we should be covering him, and there's only so much pushback from the top before, you know, your journalists start feeling like things aren't that great. So I can imagine, you know, it is possible to get the odd positive thing out, and I think you might even see a few of the organizations, when Bernie really looks like he's going to start winning, they're going to try and jump on board with him and appear to have been with him all along, because they recognize the amount of power he's going to have if he wins. So they want in on that. They want to capitalize on if he wins. It's like betting, you know, they might take a gamble that they, you know, high risk, high reward, because then obviously if you didn't win, then they like have pissed off all their advertisers and stuff. But there are also industries that will benefit from a Bernie win, like all the construction and renewable energy stuff, is like, you know, infrastructure, all that stuff's gonna be rolled out in a big way. There's a lot of money to be made, and at the end of the day, Bernie is a capitalist. And so that gets to the first point, which is that if you do have sort of a messiah complex with Bernie, messianic views on him, you know, the people who are thinking that if he wins, it's like everything's just going to get fixed, then due to the fact that we live in a capitalist society, and that, you know, that is essentially what Bernie's running on. He's running on like a let's try not to be corrupt capitalism vibe, where they're, but doing it by including people who are, for all we can tell, not corrupt, or not very corrupt, because like you got to be a little corrupt to be okay with capitalism. But like, yeah, even I think even a few people who are like wanting to ditch capitalism might still be sort of treated well by Bernie. But for the most part, he's going to not want change so big that, you know, we start actually solving the roots of the problem. And so it's almost impossible for him not to fail to some degree. And so now, yes, these things can happen, and so if somebody is a big supporter of Bernie and he fails to deliver on things, then, you know, that is really going to disillusion some people, and they might go out of politics or become even more reactionary. But if I think about my own personal road to becoming a leftist, you know, there were a number of disillusionments along that path too. And I'm not 100% convinced that these things need to be avoided. I think it would be awesome if we could see people being completely radicalized overnight. But I think maybe for some people it's a process, and part of the process is finding a politician you like and watching the system fail them. Now, for a lot of people, that actually happened with Bernie in 2016 when the DNC rigged the primary against him. It's like even been proven in courts or something, so it's not a controversial statement. But for people who are really following that primary quite closely, Bernie failed them because he took a more conservative road. When they rigged him, he didn't call them out. There was super big like indications that there was like election fraud going on. He didn't say anything, and basically they treated him like crap at the convention. Didn't say anything, and then when Hillary got the nomination, he, you know, in less time than she took to endorse Obama, he ended up endorsing her, and he actually campaigned for her in a whole bunch of states where like she didn't even go herself. It was like he's like a better campaigner for Hillary than herself is. And well, I mean, the more people saw her, the worse the polls got. So maybe she was trying to win by not campaigning, but like, yeah, that's why Trump doesn't want to debate, because he knows like the more people see him versus Bernie, like the more his con like falls apart. So when Bernie sort of did the conservative path and was like, personally I think he was like, I'll try again next time, but he never even said anything about that, and because of his age, people felt like that was going to be his last attempt, and they were like, it's over. Like, we finally get a candidate who's not taking corporate money, who's wants like every policy that has like a majority public opinion, like progressive policy, he wants it. So they were really hoping that, you know, and so when that primary failed, a lot of people were like, they went to try and find another option. They were like, well, let's try and support Jill Stein at least. I know she's quite problematic, but it's pretty difficult for me as someone on the other side of the world to figure out what the deal is there. But like, people just wanted someone who was like even like remotely left, because like Hillary and Trump, it's like two far right candidates. So for a lot of people, you know, Bernie failed them there as well, and that includes me. And but then what happened to me was, after that initial, like, you can imagine the stages of grief or whatever, but like eventually eventually I ended up sort of being pretty much radicalized by that, because I was like, geez, elections are not an easy game like this. It is definitely like very rigged, and and you can't. It's not at all a case of what the people want is what they get, and you know, so that started me considering, like, well, maybe we need to look beyond electoral politics, and that's when I found anarchism, where you still have democracy, the value, not the system, but you have the value of the people being in control, better than democracy the system itself delivers, by, you know, making every single person's voice count, and in your communities, you're trying to do your self-governing. I would encourage, in an anarchist society, for it to be more of a consensus-based decision-making process than voting. Excuse me. Because you want to really get everybody on board. And why not? So, yeah, so I would say that maybe it isn't really as big of a problem as some people make it out to be. They, you know, yeah, like, maybe people aren't going to go the way you want them to if it happens, but, you know, maybe they weren't going to go that way anyway. And sometimes you see, like, progressive candidates winning, and people end up going, like, rightward after that, even when they don't, like kind of fail. I mean, like, even the politicians that, like, sort of deliver on the stuff they promised, and like, people that voted for them are still like, well, now I'm a right-winger because I love, like, being edgy too much or something. Or if you're a tanky, like, you can quite easily turn into the right-wing, like, fashy kind. Well, I don't know, I think tankies are kind of right-wing already. So, yeah. So, like, I don't really think that that fear is valid. And I also don't think it's generally a good idea for us to make our decisions based on fears. So yes, you can point at something and say, you know, if this happens, like, this is going to be the consequence, but you can avoid those things, and I'm sure that's what people are doing, but it's basically just my own personal opinion that behind it is fear. Because what's the alternative is hope, right? Like, yes, candidates are going to fail us, yes, things like, it's capitalism, it's never going to be perfect, and yes, there are people who think Bernie can fix everything, but, like, I think the majority of his supporters don't. Like, they're like, no, we think that he's the best candidate, but we don't think he's God, we don't think he can fix anything. Now, so I feel like there's, like, this cynicism without hope, you know, so it's kind of like, almost like a nihilism, where people are, like, looking for reasons not to get on board with the movement. They're looking for reasons to justify not trying to help Bernie, or not being excited about him doing well or potentially winning. Like, for whatever reason, like, I think they personally maybe think that electoral victories are either impossible, again, like, lack of hope, or are, like, can never do any good, which is objectively disprovable. Like, it's just a fact that certain politicians are going to have different policies to other politicians, and there might be some things that they all agree on, like, let's continue doing capitalism, but there's other things they disagree on, and it's just objectively false to claim, you know, like, that Bernie would be doing an anti-Semitic executive order the way Trump is. Like, it's just completely absurd to imply that there would be no benefit in like, Bernie winning. So, like, that lack of hope, like, it can be, excuse me, like, I'm a little bit not 100% healthy right now. But yeah, that cynicism can be like a wet blanket that can kill the fire for a movement. You know, like I've seen like really good candidates, or we've even got like, you know, Jeremy Corbyn, like a really good candidate losing, but like I've seen really good candidates like where I'm not sure if that's what happened there, but like I've online like the left turns on them for something that is completely like, it's like Bernie endorsing Hillary, like turning on Bernie, like it's like he's trying to do the best that he thinks to do, and it's almost like this elitism of like, if I was in that position I would have done something different, but like you're not in that position and you don't know. And yes, it's fine to criticize stuff, but at the same time, like, criticize the person rather than like an individual like mistake, then make that out to be like a disqualifying thing for the whole person, when the pattern of behavior for the person is like really good. They slip up once and it's like, oh no, now like check this, like we can't support him. It's like, so that's like what I'm saying, where it's like the cynicism, right? And it's kind of robbing you potentially, like if that catches on, and like it can kill excitement, it can kill the, you know, the momentum that someone has, and really stop a movement in its tracks. And I don't know, like if that's what people are really trying to do, then I sort of think that they're not my comrades and I'm kind of the enemies, because I really want Bernie to win, because compared to the other options, he's going to be doing the best for the planet. I want the USA to cut its emissions as much as possible. Like if my country cut all their emissions, it wouldn't make a dent on what the USA emits. So I'm trying to survive as well, and Bernie's the only candidate who shows any promise of actually putting proper climate change policy into place. So of course, like, I want him to win, right? So like, so there's like this, so people see like the potential, I think, for Bernie to do really well, but the thing is that because he's not doing it in the sort of cult fashion where yes, the position itself is technically authoritarian, and technically, because Bernie wants to perpetuate capitalism, he is also authoritarian, but there's some nuance needed. It's not a binary, it's not black or white. Some people are way more authoritarian than others, and the way Bernie is running his campaign, his message, his aesthetic, his vibe in his ads, even the way he talks, like pretty much everything about him is like trying to be against authoritarianism of the classes, like of the oligarchs. You know, like he sees the billionaire class as the ruling class, and he's against them. He's anti that authority that they have, and he's going to, if he got what he wanted, you know, he was going to take a lot of their power and put it in the hands of the working class, and that's why they are fighting him so hard. So he's really trying to start like a grassroots campaign, like he's really trying to start a movement where his slogan is like not me, us, and like every time, you know, one of the interviewers, when he's like doing interviews or whatever, they ask him like, well, you say you want to get all of this stuff done, but how are you going to do it? You know, like there's Republicans who are going to just vote no matter what, and then he's like, well, that whole vibe. Like, I'm not just going to be like commander-in-chief, I'm going to be organizer-in-chief. What he means and what he says when he explains it is that he's literally going to campaign, go to the places where the politicians who aren't on board with the progressive vision are, and have rallies and speak to the people in that state and explain to them the class analysis of why it's better for them to have policies that he's talking about. And look at his campaign, and you look at the way he does, he's always having town halls where he asks people to tell him their experience, and then he gives them a class analysis of it. And sure, maybe you would prefer if it was like a fully anarchist and fully socialist class analysis, but it's definitely very much better than none, and it's actually conscious of class, which is like more you can say for pretty much anything any other politician who's ever run for president seems to be able to communicate. And it's not just that he thinks it, it's that he can actually get other people to understand it. My ears are like getting blocked because of all this downhill. Okay. Even when it comes to like the impeachment thing, and like people always like, well, you know, you're gonna have to be in the Senate for like however many weeks or months the trial's going on, like isn't that gonna hurt your campaign? And he's just like, no, I've got really good surrogates. My campaign is grassroots movement. It can keep going without me physically there. He really like is trying. He says like the only way we're gonna win is he literally says if millions of people get involved. Like he means there needs to be millions more voters, like in the primary even, for him to succeed. There's going to needs to be millions more new voters for him to win the presidency. But if you look at his rally and you look at like his last campaign, like I think he's got it. He can get those new voters, and the movement he's building, like it's bigger than he is, and it's not about him specifically. It's about the policies. And so it really, like, he is like in a sense a champion, a figurehead. But like, if Bernie were assassinated today, like I think it would just make his movement stronger. And there's so many other strong voices who would pick up the torch. And yeah, I honestly feel like it's not because other people are just as woke or just as charismatic or whatever, but because they'll be able to copy his model, and they'll be able to see how he gets people who are otherwise politically confused, like even if they're active, they kind of easily swayed because they don't have correct and like they don't know almost the math equations of politics, you know, like they don't understand how it fits together. And so when people say like Medicare for all who wants it, they don't understand the difference between that and the universality. And then Bernie will explain it to people, and he'll get the message of the importance of the universality out. So, you know, if he died, like if he got assassinated or whatever, you know, and even if he doesn't win the primary, even if he doesn't win the presidency, the movement is going to continue growing, because the idea is out there now. Like I don't think it's going to be suppressed. Like too many people understand, and they're not going to understand anytime soon. And if he loses and the electoral path to change keeps being blocked, eventually the movement gets big enough to have like mass protests and stuff. So I think it's almost like people don't want Bernie to succeed or his movement to succeed because they don't like his model and they would rather some other model succeeded. But that's, for me, that's almost like competitive thinking. It's like, no, like, let him succeed, because in the moment that's where the people are. That's how far they can come. And he can pull people from quite far right all the way to there, which is probably, you could say, center. And so if he can, if there's so many right wingers that are being pulled to the center, and at the same time the centrists who listen to him and pay close attention to what he's saying, they extrapolate on what he says into even more areas of society than he even talks about himself, and get even further left than he is, and become radical. So it's like he's like a conduit, he's like a pipeline on his own almost, of pushing people left. And let's take advantage of that, you know, and let's embrace the moment. And if this is what the world can come behind right now, you know, and even if it is trying to fix the problems while doing capitalism, like, while people are trying, isn't that the best time to be telling them about even better solutions than when nobody's even trying at all? Like, at least if the people understand enough about politics and you know, the economy and climate and all of these social issues, they know enough about all of that to know which candidate's best, and are willing to actually give them a shot, and are willing to allow like change to happen, and they are on board now with addressing the problems and trying to fix them. That's the perfect time to start telling them about even better solutions, and not to do it in a, oh, you guys suck for like not having the best solution. No, but like, I'm so happy that we're finally addressing this. I wish we could like do it this awesome, way better way, and I'm gonna keep fighting until we do that way awesome, better way. And I know you see the problem because you want to fix it now. Don't you think it would be better for us to do my way, the way that's even better that I've explained? And then, you know, and then see who you can pull with you onto that position and build that movement. And then maybe the next time there's an election, instead of stressing about, you know, maybe if Bernie is not running, or even if he is, but let's say he's not running anymore, and people are like, what's going to happen to the movement or whatever, like, then everybody can get behind someone even further left than he was, because now you have pulled so much more people left to start with, and then even further left by your taking advantage and using the opportunity to radicalize people. So, you know, I think there's the fear that if there is actually some success, people are going to then become complacent and they're not going to want to keep fighting. But in my opinion, that's a lack of imagination and kind of a lack of knowledge. Because if you honestly don't think there's better positions than what Bernie can deliver, or if you don't think there's positions which are better that other people would also see as better, but like, if you don't think other people can see the value in the solutions that are better, then like, either you can't really imagine, you know, how to communicate it to them, or how we would get from here to there, or there's some gap in your imagination, because you know, for you personally, you might understand that there's better positions, but then you can't imagine how other people could come to the same understanding as you, or you genuinely don't have the knowledge of those other positions. And so if there was some success, you would no longer be able to talk about addressing the problems in the abstract and saying, we don't need this, we need that, in like a platitude way, like, we don't need capitalism, we need socialism, and you can say it and it's like, yeah, I'm making a good point. But then when you have like success maybe with Bernie, you can no longer say, you know, capitalism's this always, like, everything about it's always going to be negative, because some positive would have happened, and you can't say, well, now this socialism is positive and capitalism is negative. You can't make that distinction like that. But in my opinion, we shouldn't even be thinking about things that way, because we should be thinking of it the way I spoke before about gears, shifting gears, and the higher the gear, the more progress you can make. And there is shifts in adoptance of different ideologies, and so if we can get into the Bernie gear now, then I think you should be able to know what the next gear up from Bernie is so well. Like, I think maybe mutualism and then actual anarcho-communism, maybe. So we could try and get mutualist policies, a mutualist candidate or something, like after Bernie 1 or something. But like, you got to know what the next gear is, and then like you got to imagine how to communicate and get other people to understand. And so Bernie is so great at getting others onto his gear, and a lot of the people, once they get into his gear, they're like, well, now there's another gear there, I'm just going to go. And so yeah, I think we shouldn't be thinking of it as like Bernie is capitalist so he's bad and I'm a socialist so I'm good. No, there's gradients and gradients and gradients, and it's like, sure, maybe Bernie's a centrist, but right now the world isn't ready to go far left, and that's the far left's fault. It's not Bernie's fault for not being far left, and you can't be angry that he's the one that's popular and not your far left idea politician. He's the one that's popular because that's where people are at right now. And so I think we got to be a bit more positive about life. You know, like, good things can happen. Like, we can bring about change, and we can still be working towards completely new like systems, like socialism, like a moneyless, marketless economy without a state. You can still be trying to advocate for and build that on the side, while also trying to take advantage of where things are now with the masses, and if they are going to be able to be, if the working class is going to get relief from Bernie winning, we can help Bernie win, because it's also going to help us get closer to socialism, because more people are going to be left and more friendly to socialist ideas, but also because more people are going to have healthcare, are going to have better pay, are going to have more time off, are going to have free college. You know, if there is a success and there is this grassroots movement and people actually, like, you know, new voters come in, if need be protests or whatever, to actually get the policies in place. But even the attempt to do it, like, is positive, because even if you fail, like, people aren't going to stop wanting those things, and maybe they will get disillusioned, and maybe in a whole generation will give up on progressive ideas like the boomers kind of have. But there's always going to be another generation, and we're going to get to socialism one day, but we might say, well, you know, the planet's dying, it's socialism or death, but like, no, capitalism going to try its best to survive too, and it might be not able to, but things like carbon tax, like things like renewable energy, like, it can make it that we don't all die, at least. And then if we're not all going to be dead, then, you know, like, we still have a chance of implementing socialism. So, you know, it's like, hope for the best but plan for the worst. Like, if hope for Bernie to win, but plan for if he doesn't, and plan, you know, hope for everyone to instantly all want to be socialists immediately, but plan for if, like, they aren't interested, and you got to actually convince them, and you got to bring them over slowly, bit by bit. First get them from the right wing, you know, to the center, and then to the left. And you don't do that by advocating for the centre. And Bernie doesn't really advocate for the centre. He advocates for centrist positions, but for leftist values. But you advocate for leftist values and positions. But if people want the centrist position first, you know, like, it's still a positive change. And yeah, so I don't know. I really think we should try and take advantage of it. We should see it as a yes and instead of a no but. We should try and do both radical action and trying to help people like Bernie win and trying to help his movement succeed, because we really are trying to shift the entire planet's Overton window to the left, because only once the entire planet has disavowed right-wing ideas will they stop being propagated and promoted by whoever would have had them. And it's undeniable that Bernie shifts the Overton window left for a significant portion of the people, a significant amount. And in this moment, I think that is actually kind of almost the best possible effect. I can't imagine someone else being even better at it than he's at it right now. So for now, I think it's great what he's doing, and I hope he wins. I hope you are on board with his movement, support him, and want to try and help him win. And then hopefully all over the world, other politicians can see a success, other populations can see the success, and we can even try and get leftists elected all over. But yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.